Well, thank you guys for coming. I'll just stall while Liz works on the computer. So I'm Karli Wittner. Like you said, I'm the Forestry and Natural Resources Supervisor for the City of Eden Prairie. My background is natural resources, so I got my bachelor's degree in ecology from Northern Michigan University, and then my master's degree in land resources and environmental science from Montana State University, and then did my thesis work on LIDAR, microtopography in restored prairies using LIDAR technology. And then I've been working in the field for like 15 years at various places, but she's got it up, so done stalling for time. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about the habitat restoration projects that we have going on in Eden Prairie. So, and we'll just be touching base on like a few of them, but anytime that I talk about the land in Eden Prairie, I always want to do a land acknowledgement. So I, in the city of Eden Prairie, are just the current caretakers of the land in Eden Prairie, but these are the homelands of the Dakota people and the Anishinaabe, and they are the original caretakers, and they're the people who have kept our land in really good, pristine condition, and our waterways and all of that good stuff, and helping Ina Maka, or Mother Earth. So that is my good. And so part of that is in Eden Prairie, we're blessed to have like a really wide swath of natural heritage. So we have remnant prairie, where there's only 1% of that left in the entire state, but we have 5 different locations of remnant prairie, which is incredible. We have a really pristine floodplain forest right on the Minnesota River. We have remnant maple basswood forest and some of the best examples of it in the Twin Cities metro area. And we have large swaths of wetlands that have been protected in Eden Prairie. So we're very lucky that all of this has been preserved. So I like to go through like our conservation timeline because it's kind of unique for a municipality. So in the 1960s, we had a group of farmers that came together and really decided that they wanted to protect the natural areas. And so they knew that development was coming. It was kind of inevitable, but they also knew that the forests, the prairies, the woodlands, the wetlands, the creeks, the lakes were all really precious, and that they only had one shot to do this. And so we were one of the first municipalities to have conservation easements to make sure that if they went through development, that these precious areas were going to be protected. They also looked into, purchasing or getting donated parkland. Part of that was the Anderson Lakes and Bryant Lake Parks, which the city had purchased originally, and then handed over management to Three Rivers Park District in the 70s. The Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge then stepped in the 70s and 80s and was able to protect most of the Minnesota River. And in Eden Prairie is called the Upgrala Unit. And then in 1994, the citizens of Eden Prairie took that a step further and decided that they wanted to set aside pieces of land that were just going to be for conservation. So just for passive recreation, they weren't going to build baseball fields. They're not going to be used for active recreation use, not soccer fields, just to be conserved in perpetuity. And so that referendum passed in 1994. And all of that's led to Eden Prairie having a really high percentage of park and open space compared to the rest of the metro area. So we have about 44%, so nearly half of Eden Prairie is preserved, which is pretty cool for a suburb. Kind of just going through like our natural resources program. So we have about 3,500 acres of open space that is managed by the city. So that's a mixture of parks, conservation areas, stormwater retention ponds, and then trail connections that are owned by the city. We've actually been doing prescribed fire for a very long time internally. So that we've been doing it internally since 2000, which is a really long time for a municipality to be doing that internally. A lot of cities are now just getting into prescribed fire, but we've been doing it for nearly 25 years. We do a lot of buckthorn removal with our ICWC crew, and so that is a crew of it's a work release program, so we get to have folks come and learn skills, and they help with getting our buckthorn removal. We also have a program where residents can remove buckthorn or to restore habitat in adjacent city land, like in their backyard. So we have a permitting process for that. We have 48 acres of turf conversion areas within the park. So typically we turn them into prairies or oak savannas. We have 46 stormwater ponds or rain gardens within our parks. And then we have 200 acres of ecological restoration projects that have been going on at one point or another since about 2000. And yes.
Thing that the city allows.
Yep, we have a permit process for that. We will usually do like one pickup of buckthorn if they bring it to the curb, and then we have like an uprooter program available, and then I'm also available for consulting. Yeah. And then we work with our volunteers through our Friends of Eden Prairie Parks group. Yay! Our friends. So this map is showing kind of all of our conservation areas and our parks, and the red outlined areas are all of our kind of management areas that we have going on. And I'm just going to give you guys a kind of a tour of these different areas. So we're going to go through Edenbrook Conservation Area, Miller, Starring Lake, Prairie Bluff, and Richard T. Anderson. So I have kind of a mix of like parks and then conservation areas to show you guys. So we'll start with Prairie Bluff. So if you guys remember that 1994 conservation referendum, so when that townhouse / single family home development went in, the city decided to purchase the remaining portion of that property. And so that remnant prairie is now protected in perpetuity. In 1996, the city hired a contractor to burn. And then in 1997, it was followed up by a management plan. So the management plan is pretty extensive, and it's the one that we still use today to guide our management of Prairie Bluff. In 1998, we introduced biocontrol, which is just a beetle for leafy spurge. And then we embarked on another restoration project in 2020 to about 2023 for an oak savanna restoration. And currently, we're continuously managing non-natives.
I just want to mark out, this is the spring.
Oh, yeah.
Road, this is the Spring Road property right here, just for reference.
Yes, good. So we're going to be hopefully neighbors, working on this together. So this is after our burn that we did in spring of 2003. And then this is a before picture. This did not go in the order I wanted it to, but bear with me. So if you notice, this is when we purchased the property in 1994. So all of that yellow is leafy spurge, and the grass is porcupine grass. So porcupine grass is really typical of bluff prairies, but you can see like how very yellow.
Is porcupine invasive?
Nope, native.
It is native.
Yep. Okay. So porcupine grass is a native grass, and then you can see a lot of the green is red cedars, and those are considered invasive in a prairie setting, even though they are a native plant. So Prairie Bluff, looked like it needed a lot of help when we first got the property. So hence why I wanted to attack it with biocontrol, reintroducing fire, trying to get those cedars under control. And then this is what it looks like today. So it's a pretty stark difference. There's a lot more diversity. We found kittentails, which is a state threatened species at Prairie Bluff. And we find a lot of different rare plants pretty much every time I go out there, I'm like, oh my gosh, a new plant for me to look at. So it's a very, very special place. But essentially, we've never had to go out and mow this prairie. We've never had to reseed the prairie. We've never had to use extensive herbicide use in the prairie. All we had to do was just reintroduce fire. And so in a prairie habitat, fire has always been part of keeping that habitat as diverse and in high quality condition. And that has actually been done by the indigenous people. And so if a lot of you guys, some of you probably know the history a little bit better perhaps than I do, but Prairie Bluff does have evidence of a long history of Native American presence there. There is burial mounds there. It's where one of the last wars between the Anishinaabe and the Dakota people took place. So it's clear evidence that this was maintained by probably the Dakota people or the Anishinaabe before us with fire. And so just by returning fire to the landscape, we've been able to reintroduce a whole bunch of diversity to the landscape. More fire, see, that's going through it. And so I mentioned this before, so this was an oak savanna restoration. It's a lot more cool when I take people out there, but how oak savannas typically work in a natural setting is that you'll have like this bluff prairie and it'll come into more of a swale or have a little bit more of a water presence, I guess. It's more of a transitional plant community. So in this one, it's coming down into like a swale area, and it would have gone down right into the river and been a transitional zone between a floodplain forest. That's kind of interrupted by Flying Cloud Drive. So for this particular restoration, we did have to do not only buckthorn removal, but we did have to do some large tree removal that was encroaching into the oak savanna, and that was just due to lack of fire happening. So if we were able to continue like a normal fire regime, those trees wouldn't have been there. So we cut we cut the buckthorn down. We cut some of the trees down. Some of the trees we girdled, and then we piled and burned them in the wintertime. And then this is kind of a photo of what it looks like today. This area we did reseed with seed collected from Prairie Bluff. So one of the more kind of most important with like remnants that you have to think about is not introducing outside seed source. So you don't want, I don't want to go to like a prairie restoration, for example, not that I'm recommending them, and just purchase seed and throw it out there. So wanting to protect that genetic integrity of a remnant is really important. So we only use seed that is collected from Prairie Bluff anytime we do restoration that we need seeding for. Now you can see that there's still leafy spurge, but there's a lot more diversity underneath it than there was before. Before I move on, do you guys have any questions about Prairie Bluff? It's not going to be as difficult as you think it's going to be. So if you want to do like, oh yeah. So doing fire is like, I do it next to houses and it's very safe, and so that's completely fine. If you want to do like more seeding or things like that, Prairie Bluff is right there, and we can do like seed collection events and things like that to help. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to work with you guys on this. Like, I'm really pumped and excited about it, actually. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We would love for you guys to connect with our trails. Yep, for sure. So that's something like we'll plan with together. Go ahead. Yes, yep.
Doing the same thing there, or is that the difference?
No, we do a very similar management there. Yep,
The genetic hybrids?
yep.
That so localized that half a mile away is,
No, so those two would be ones like we can collect from Richard T and like plant at Prairie Bluff, or like your location. Spring Road is what you're calling
Spring
it?
Road.
Spring Road, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Do you guys have any other questions? Yeah, I'm really pumped. I'm so excited. Awesome. So just, moving up a little bit. So Starring Lake Park, and Outdoor Center. So the Outdoor Center is on the north end of the lake, and then the park is on the southern end. And so we have 7 turf conversions in here, and we actually have a really intact plant community. So it has a lot of buckthorn, but once the buckthorn gets removed, there's actually a lot of natives that just pop back up. So we haven't really had to do a lot of seeding. And so that's been a good pro. A con that's been happening is that oak wilt was found in 2020, and we've been trying our best to get it out of there with aggressive removals, and it still just keeps popping back up. So yeah. And then the purple areas where we're going to have to remove an extensive amount of red oaks and probably switch it over to like maybe an oak savanna, because it's been really hard to shake in there. So that's our sad. But on our positive, see, I cookie cutter the sad, so we don't get too down. But we have a lot of Friends of Eden Prairie Parks volunteers. That's what FEEP is. Helping at the lower parking lot and the outdoor center to remove, to help us like with removing buckthorn in areas. And so with their help and between the city's help, I think we can get Starring Lake in pretty good shape over a good period of time. But let's get to the photos. That's the more fun part. So this is this woodland up on the top. You can see there's still little seedlings of buckthorn, but we have this is what I'm talking about, where there's a really good native plant community. Because right down below, like those are all native plants right there. So it's in fairly decent shape. Just gotta get the buckthorn. This is the lower. I just took this photo, so if it wasn't a foggy day, you could see the lake. But this is at the lower, like where the pier is located. The lower parking is what we call it. You wouldn't be able to see the lake, but our volunteers removed the buckthorn, and so the white is where the lake would be.
So it's back in here?
Yep. Yeah, so you can actually see it. And I found high bush cranberry there, and I was like really excited because I was like, this is awesome. So that plant community is in pretty good shape. And then this is my sad where we removed a lot of the red oaks, and then we've tried to like replant there, and then we've been kind of struggling with buckthorn in that area. But and then this is at the outdoor center, the prairie that is over there. That is getting managed. So lots of fun stuff going on over at Starring Lake. Do you guys have any questions about Starring Lake?
did you say you're
We've been removing red oaks. We have even more we have to remove this year. No, they're not invasive. So oak wilt is yep. So it has oak wilt. So red oaks are like really susceptible to the oak wilt fungi. And so once a red oak gets infected with it, like it's pretty much a death sentence for them. Like there's no, like you can't treat for it or anything. Other oaks like bur oaks or white oaks can have like some resistance. So even if they're infected, you can do some treatment. But yeah, so like for the red oaks, they
Typically spread through roots as well as insects. Yeah.
Both. Yep. So you can get like the root grafting and then the insects.
That's why it's recommended not to trim oaks during when? Like
April, May, June, and July.
because that damage attracts insects, which then can bring the fungus.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You got it, Liz.
So
Yes, you're actually asking the $1,000,000 question because they don't actually know where oak wilt came from. They think that maybe it came from like Central America, maybe like southwestern United States, but because there's a really similar fungi that seems to go, but they don't have a total handle of where it came from. Or maybe they do and I just don't know the current research, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Luckily it's not going like it's been in our environment for decades. So it's not going to become, knock on wood, it's not going to ever become like a EAB situation like with ash trees. So I'm not like super concerned that we're going to lose all of our oak trees due to oak wilt, but it's something for us to just like monitor and like keep on track so we don't have like devastations like we have at Starring right now. Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions about Starring? Perfect. I'm just keeping it casual, like, it's a conversation.
And the only reason I asked for the microphone is we're recording it, and this microphone won't capture any questions from the audience. So when someone watches the recording, they won't know what the question was.
I know.
That Karli's answering.
Sorry. So Miller Park, so it actually has a 20 acres of remnant bigwoods, which is really interesting for a park area. So all of this,
Mitchell? Like
yep,
Mitchell?
yes,
reference?
like,
Okay.
yep, right adjacent to Lake Mitchell or Mitchell Lake, however we want to say it.
Mitchell, yeah.
But all of the areas where like the ball fields and the soccer fields were farmed originally. And then the farmers just left the maple basswood forest, probably for a sugar bush, I'm assuming is what the Millers left it for. And then it got encroached on by buckthorn, per usual, and garlic mustard. But in 2021, I believe we did our first buckthorn removal, and we had a really good reflush of natives coming back. Not as much as I would like, so I do want to augment it a little bit with some other natives. And then we have the Mitchell Lake Association has been really active in that lake shed of like removing buckthorn and like restoring areas along that shoreline. And so they also have extended that volunteerism to Miller Park and helping us keep that area somewhat buckthorn free. It's a work in progress.
Is that Miller Park up here?
Right.
Where is it?
It's right. Yeah. This is all Miller Park.
Oh, okay.
So here's the remnant bigwoods is right here. And it goes from this is a remnant maple basswood forest, and then this is actually a remnant oak basswood forest right here. And I don't know what this is. I took a bunch of ecologists out there and I was like, what plant community is this? And they were like, I don't know. I was like, okay. And then we also have like a little Mitchell Point right here that a resident is helping to remove buckthorn there. So that's kind of what the blue is. And then this outlet right here, this wetland right here is where Mitchell Lake there's underground channel. What is it? Pipes. Thank you. Oh my God. Sorry, it's late in the day. Underground pipes are flowing through here, and then Red Rock Lake is right over here, and so it flows here into this wetland, and then will flow down into Red Rock. So this is a future project that I have of like removing buckthorn and trying to like get that wetland restored. Yeah, and then I have a DNR CPL grant to help us do that too. So lots of help. Then I could get to the pictures. So this is the wetland that is in need of help. So these are hybrid cattails, and so narrowleaf cattail is actually a non-native invasive cattail, And then we have broadleaf cattail that is our native, and then they like to hybridize and make hybridized cattails. So that's what's taking over here. This wetland is more than likely supposed to be like a sedge meadow that gets inundated with flooding, so the cattails are going to have to probably go. And then we have some lovely thistle that we got to get rid of, and then all in the back here is buckthorn. So the wetland needs a lot of help, but I believe in us. I think we can get it. And then this is the forest area near the boat launch. And so all of this is wood nettle, and that's a really good indicator of a fairly healthy woodland, or sorry, forest area. Woodlands and forests are different. So if you go to like Riley Creek Conservation Area, where it's like the best example of a maple basswood forest, you'll notice in the summertime it gets inundated with wood nettle. And so it's a good indication that there's some, beyond wood nettle, there's not a ton of other natives, and that's why like I want to do some more plantings here. And that's why you have to like kind of weigh your pros and cons. So when you're looking at a remnant, you have to see like, well, how is like in this case, it's looking at the understory of like, do I have a lot of natives returning or do I not? And if I'm not having a lot of natives returning, and that's when you decide to like augment with like outside sources, because otherwise like they're not probably in the seed bank. It's been like 3 years at this point. Go ahead. So they are related. I would say in terms of hurting, stinging nettle is the worst. Wood nettle is like more like moderately annoying. And then there's another nettle that I can't think of that's like doesn't do it. Yes. Yep. So it's broader, darker green. It has the same kind of like flowering structure. But yeah, the biggest thing is how it causes you pain, you know.
But it is edible.
It is edible. Yep. It is edible. I've been told that you can use nettle to help with arthritis by like hitting it against your joints. And if I had to pick between stinging nettle or wood nettle, I'd pick wood nettle personally. Perfect. Do you guys have any questions about Miller Park? Mm-hmm.
Correct to say, when we do restoration, we certainly address that. So like for like the Pioneer Trail wetland, but yeah, I'm not sure not quite sure what you're asking, I guess. Pioneer Trail wetland, yes. Yes. Yeah, green canary grass is the big battle out there for sure, but cattails are very difficult to control.
Yes.
So that's the kind of pick and choose where you want to focus those resources for, and they're also very hard to tell apart, the hybridized from the non-hybridized.
Yep. Well, I can walk you guys all through this journey. So because this is a contained wetland and it's kind of smaller, I'm kind of going with the scorch earth method. So there's a herbicide called imazapyr, and imazapyr is the only herbicide that I have found to be effective in killing cattails and killing reed canary grass, and also the seed bank. And that's why it's something you want to use judiciously, and it's not correct for every wetland restoration. In this case, there's really no natives there. It's either hybridized cattail or reed canary grass, and it's small and contained. And so I feel a little bit easier doing it using imazapyr. Yep. So imazapyr is an aquatic approved herbicide, and then I would also, it's only an overflow if Mitchell Lake is overflowing, so it's not like continuous water. going. So I would do it like during a period of where it's drier. Then I would probably burn it. So again, hoping for dry weather. So I'd probably burn it to try to get like the thatch off if there's any other regrowth through. Cattails don't really like to be burned. Prairie canary grass is another story, but that's fine.
They don't mind. Canary grass
Really
doesn't
don't.
mind, Amber.
Ugh. And then reseeding after. I usually will wait. I think a massive period is like 90 days after, and then you can technically like reseed after, and I usually do 6 months. So I'll do this in the fall. Yep.
Is this one you're thinking of restoring in the fairly near future, this
Mhm.
wetland?
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully next fall. Fingers crossed.
What's your thinking on a hybrid capital?
So this is kind of how I think most people in natural resources is that we treat hybrid cattails like they're invasive. So they're kind of in the same category as the narrowleaf cattail for us because they act the same way as the narrowleaf cattail, where they'll just take over a site. They don't play really well with other natives. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts with that. No, not particularly.
It's just, I mean, it's evergreen.
Yes. Yep, it is. Yep.
That and canary grass.
That and canary grass. Yeah. It's kind of why like wetland restorations are tough because you have two really tough invasives just taking over the whole area.
Are they native invasive?
Like in general? Or-
Hybrid.
No. So narrowleaf isn't native, and then hybrid is just between the native broadleaf cattail and then the narrowleaf cattail together. One of the plant ecologists I went out with from the DNR actually said that broadleaf cattails are actually only supposed to be like somewhat present in fens and like kind of like somewhat present on shorelands, but they're not supposed to take over like this. Like they're supposed to be like, you get like a little pocket here or there, a little patch, but you're not supposed to have a whole area of them. So that's another indicator for us too. If they're not playing well with others, they're not.
Are you aware of any sites in Eden Prairie that have non-hybridized broadleaf cattail?
I think we have some in Edenbrook.
Yeah.
Yeah. In like the middle of the wetlands, right? Yeah. Far away. Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions for Miller? These are all really good questions. Perfect. Speaking of Edenbrook, good segue. So Edenbrook Conservation Area is our largest conservation area. It is 240 acres, and it's what we call a wetland complex. So there's multiple different types of wetlands found within Edenbrook. And we actually have an area the DNR uses to collect vegetation data in Edenbrook. So there's areas of the wetland that are still in okay-ish enough condition to get the DNR's attention to check it out. And then there's these little kind of islands of actually like it's really interesting because they're all like each of the islands are almost like a different plant community. So this island is a remnant prairie. This island is a oak savanna, oak woodland. And then this island is an oak woodland. So it's kind of a interesting, each one's unique and an individual.
Is that Purgatory Creek coming through?
Yes, yep, this is Purgatory Creek. Boop. Actually, I think it goes this way. No, it goes that way. Sorry. And then this little patch of water right here is actually a storm water pond from this neighborhood. All over here. So I feel like, so Edenbrook is a great example of like the city work. So the city's working on this area here using more DNR CPL fundings, but this area here, and this area here have only been worked on by volunteers. And so it's kind of showing like Edenbrook is like these different islands are getting a lot more attention because volunteers have taken up the mantle to try to get rid of the buckthorn. Where like I'd have to wait for funding to like be able to go after it. But it has a lot of like really interesting plant communities there. That's why I have the Friends of Eden Prairie Parks logo right there, because it's been amazing. So we're calling this one like Edenbrook East. So this is Glenn Olson. He's the founder of Eden Prairie Parks. And so he started working on Edenbrook a few years prior to, I started in the city January 2023. And Friends of Eden Prairie Parks started in April 2023. And he started doing this like 4 years prior to that. And Edenbrook gave him the inspiration for Friends of Eden Prairie Parks. So here's kind of like a before, like it's just kind of a huge mountainous thing of buckthorn. But just purely through volunteer efforts, they were able to get this whole area cleared. And then this is Duck Lake Road right here. And then Glenn also donated some serviceberry to plant in the area. And we've had a lot of success with violets have come up a lot. We haven't really seeded there, and we've had a lot of natives come up. And so it's been a really good, like, I think he's up to like 3 or 4 acres. Again, just like hand cutting, like completely volunteer work, which has been awesome. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Well, we have these little, they're called, yeah, like protective, like they're like plantaris. So they help like seedlings grow, but they also help protect them. So they're supposed to like stay in there until like they're like a really big actual like tree like growing up out of them. So that's one way. Otherwise, we use Irish Spring soap. And for some reason that works. I don't know. Yeah. 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 I don't usually use the Irish Spring so much in our natural areas. Usually it's in our plantings that like in our parks where we have a high deer population. I'm like, okay, guys, I can only replant this tree so many times. But it's a good food for thought. So this is part of our CPL grant project. So this project started prior to me, so I don't have before photos. But if we use our imaginations, it was a huge wall of buckthorn is what I'm imagining it was. And we started having like a brush mower go out and in the winter time and clear out like the buckthorn. And then when I started, I had them go out again and like clear out the buckthorn using a forestry mower with a skid steer. So it's an option that can be utilized with some success. I wouldn't say I would use it on every single project, but in certain projects, there's not, like in this area, there's not a ton of like other shrubs besides buckthorn. So I I feel okay with using a forestry mower.
Just have to mow.
You usually have to mow it like twice. So we mowed it in 2022 with the brush mower, and then we mowed it like the same areas again in 2023 because it'll still like pop back up. And then like you can see here, like it'll still pop up with like seedlings. But it's a way that you can mechanically control because otherwise you'd either like have to hand cut it or come back and like try to herbicide all of it. So it's a way to like get a lot of buckthorn taken care of in a shorter period of time.
So the same time you cut it, it just doesn't come back. And sprout.
Yeah.
Usually it's screwed.
Yeah, typically, but you know, it's buckthorn, so. And then I have a contract with Minnesota Native Landscapes, and they come through and get anything that we miss or maybe didn't get put through. And then we did, what you can kind of see here, we did a native, I say native graminoids, but I just mean like sedges and grasses. And so we did a native mix of about 10 different species through there to help like continue to repress that buckthorn. Because again, this was like, it was like big, giant buckthorn. So from 2022, 2023, and now 2020, in spring 2025, I'm hoping that we can conduct a spring burn. And so the native graminoid mix helps for two things. So it helps to outcompete like the buckthorn. And the Covered Up project by Dave Schuster at the University of Minnesota has done studies on that and has shown it to be fairly effective. And then there's been research done that spring burns also help to like knock back buckthorn and also prevents like seedlings from regrowing. So I'm hoping that after the spring, we should be in pretty good shape. And then we'll follow up with a native woodland seed mix after. So this one should be, knock on wood, should be in pretty good shape. This site has kind of been my, like if you see it to believe kind of a site where like people who are like, there's no way like you're losing your battle with buckthorn. I kind of point to this where I'm like, we're winning here so far. So Rustic Hills is the park that's just north of Eden Brook, but they're connected through the same trail system. And so here's the before picture. So you can see like Purgatory Creek is right over here. Actually, you can't see because there's buckthorn. Purgatory Creek is right over here. And of course, I didn't get the picture of that, but this is all like volunteer work too. Like they just did hand cutting through to get rid of like the buckthorn. So volunteers are very effective, and it's been really good to work with them. And then this winter, the volunteers will put down that native graminoid mix, and then we'll kind of assess from there on if we're going to do like an internal burn or not for how that's going. And this is a picture of like the remnant prairie. So you see like the encroachment of the red cedars. This is buckthorn. And so volunteers actually decided that that they wanted to take on this area. And so they're working right now on cutting like the buckthorn, and we'll probably come back and cut like the red cedars. And then all of this is actually stiff goldenrod, but then this is smooth brome, which is an invasive plant. So the reason I've been hearing from neighbors that this area was used as a horse pasture. So I think that it is still considered a remnant prairie, but I think that's probably why it's being overtaken by smooth brome, is because if it was really heavily overly grazed, like grazing's good, but sometimes overly grazing can have smooth brome introduction. So I want to try to reintroduce fire here and just do that for a few years and see if that'll bring back any natives. Because there's some there's like just pockets of it that makes me really suspicious. But if I'm unsuccessful and we don't have like a lot, then I'll burn one more time and then I'll do a seeding there. I think that's all I have for Edenbrook. Do you guys have any questions about Edenbrook? Okay. All right, last one, you guys. So Richard T. Anderson Conservation Area. So these are pockets of remnant prairie right here, and then right here. That were, so they were burned by, they have the kind of a similar story. They were burned by the indigenous people. Then this was was owned as like a farm, but they didn't, they had livestock farming, and they didn't do what a lot of livestock farmers would normally do, which is plant them over with smooth brome. So they didn't do that. They actually just let them graze onto the remnant prairies, and that's why they were able to remain for so long. And then when they stopped doing that, that's when we had a huge encroachments of red cedars coming in. And so that's been kind of a big major project. So right here is still really thick with red cedars, so that'll be a future project of getting rid of those. This area is really thick with red cedars. So once we actually have an impending slope failure here, so once we get that sorted out, I'll feel more comfortable getting rid of the red cedars, because right now the red cedars are holding in the soil, and so we don't want to mess with that. And so right now we have a current project going on here where we have kind of a trail that's just been washed out. Most of the trails through RTA are actually old farm trails. So that's what this one was. It was an old farm trail that now is just getting like really rushed out. I'll show you pictures later. And then this one is an impending slope failure. So all of these soils are really sandy. And so when this development got put in, a lot of the water, instead of going getting intercepted, you guys know you're all water people, I think is all getting, because it's getting all concentrated into one area. So there's the East Stormwater Pond right here. So it's all getting concentrated in one area and kind of going really running through the slope in an unnatural way and too much water, and then it's punching out through the side of the hill slope. So we have a lot of trees that are looking, so once we get that sorted out, it's more than likely going to have to be a retaining wall. We're looking into trying to see if we can use an innovative solution of using a living green wall, where instead of using, I think there's some areas where we're going to have to use a retaining wall, but hoping to supplement it with a living wall where they'll use basically a geogrid, and then we'll be able to use our native plants to stabilize the slope, kind of with an engineered approach, with also using the native plant approach. So we're working with an engineering firm for that, because I don't know construction things at all and how all that works. So that's all magic. So because we have these construction projects going on, you can kind of see in this photo that you're getting a sneak peek of the erosion concerns. Because these native plants are going to get impacted by construction, I wanted to rescue them. So we conducted plant rescues. We did 2 of them. One was with UNC Maryland right here, and Tom's right next to her. To basically just save as many of the native plants as we could. We actually ended up saving all of the native plants that I wanted to save, so that was good. And then I'll go back here. Up in this kind of area, if you notice, we don't actually have trails there, but people think we do. So there's a lot of user-created trails there that have been also causing erosion issues that I wanted to shut down. And then there's a safety concern where a trail kind of comes down this way, and then if you guys have been to RTA, there's a huge slope where cliff swallows roost, and it's a trail that goes right there. So also a safety concern. So I wanted to shut those down. So the plants didn't go very far. So here they are in the trails. And then there's Marilyn and Tom and Glenn, just putting the plants into the trails. And it's a good way of, helping to prevent further erosion and degradation, and then also providing that visual cue for folks of like this isn't actually a trail, so stop walking here, please. And then also like my remnant plant like native plants didn't have to travel very far. Like they traveled, what would you say, Marilyn, like 200 feet maybe? Yeah. So this project is going on right now as we speak. Well, maybe not right now. I think they went to sleep now, but or went home. So this is that same kind of trail that I was showing you guys. So it goes up to a remnant prairie right here. And you can tell like it's super sandy soils. There's a lot of erosion happening. It's making kind of a bowl. This is up at the very top. So we had a bench and signage. And you can see even more of like this erosion occurring, and there's a lot of like soil compaction from human use. And then this is one of those trails that folks created that it's not actually a trail. And then I think back in like the early 2000s, they installed timbers across. So they did 9 of them that ended up exacerbating the erosion problem. So you can see that the water was basically flowing down, coming back, and just kind of cutting into this here. So all of the water for the whole area is floating down. And then here you can see more of that, like all the water, it's kind of like a bowl. So like the water's flowing, like coming down to here into that bowl. And here's like the other timbers, not really doing anything. So, so this is how like this. So this is current construction. Like I just took these photos last week. So kind of some part of the solutions is we're installing these timbers here to keep people focused on the trail and not going into like the remnant prairie. But it's also trying to funnel them into this like new overlook area. So we moved the signs, they reflattened this, and then they won't, it's a huge visual blocker, like you can't continue past here. And there was an erosion, I think I've sneaked past this, maybe on this side. No, I didn't see it on that photo. But there was also like another social trail over here that folks were actually going down, and was also another like erosion issue. So just another like, staying on the trail, very visual barrier. And then I was really suspicious of this, and you guys have no idea how many times I talked to this like construction contractor about, I was like, this is a remnant prairie, like don't hurt it. Like this is a remnant like maple basswood forest, like don't hurt it. And they're like really receptive to it. But they're doing such little damage. So this is Jason, he's the parks construction supervisor. They have mats down over like the remnant prairie, so that way their vehicles won't compact the soil. And then they're installing these stone steps, and they're staying like right within that like footprint. So they're really only damaging the area like right where basically where it's already damaged. And then they regraded the entire trail already, but they're going to continuously do like these stone steps like throughout. And then they're going to be putting retaining walls on the side to try to really make sure like we won't continuously have erosion. One of the big reasons that we wanted to do this was because if we go back to the picture, there is an unnamed creek that flows right here and is getting all of that sediment from all that sand is going right into that unnamed creek that flows right down here and then comes into, this is Grass Lake, and then eventually goes into the Minnesota River. So we wanted, this is causing like a lot, like even our engineers like double checked the numbers because they couldn't believe like how much like sedimentation we were losing. And then in addition to that, like it was encroaching into those remnant communities. So it was like causing, encroaching into like a loss of like that remnant prairie. It was causing a loss of that. This is a remnant maple basswood forest. And so if we didn't do anything, we would have lost both of those eventually. maybe not for 10 or 20 years, but in El Futuro. Perfect. These are my hot off the press. Perfect. Do you guys have any questions?
Got to be some schedule of replacement or there's. That's in there.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So tell me how you think you bring your, like, Apple Valley,
Mhm.
you doing that, how do you guys?
That's a really good question. So I would say that we've had a tree preservation ordinance for so long, and we've had a habit of when you're putting in a development that it's almost an expectation that you're going to be giving a lot of that to the city if there's like natural areas that I think we do a lot. Like Eden Prairie has a history of doing a lot better than neighboring communities in that regard. So when a development is going in, and there's like natural areas, those are automatic. Like we basically tell them like if you want to develop, you have to protect this, either a conservation easement or you have to give it to the city. In terms of like large trees, we try our best to like work with the developers on protecting the trees. We'll send them back to like redesigns. It's not always doable or possible, but they do have to pay a pretty hefty fee into like either the tree preservation fund or they do have to do replacements for those. So we do the best we can. And at the end of the day, it is private property, so we have to work within like those legal limitations of what we can and can't do as a city.
Do I say anything, or do I just sort of say, well, guess it's okay?
It depends on how much acreage they have. So in our city ordinance, it's if it's if it's less than half an acre, it doesn't fall under like our tree protection ordinance, but if it's over half an acre, then it does. And that was, I think, from my understanding, was to protect like private single residential lot property rights, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
How many people are in your department? How big is the budget? Maybe the salary budget.
That's a good question. So it's for full-time staff for like forestry and natural resources, it's me and then my forester. And then I oversee, I co-oversee like the park maintenance guys. So I get them sometimes. Mostly they're doing my tree removals for like, EAB or like disease trees. We actually don't like, the only time we ever like cut down a tree is if it's like posing a risk or it's diseased or something like that. Like we don't cut down.
People and then you get to use resources of the park person?
Yes. Yep. And then my budget for not including salaried people is probably 100 to 150,000, including forestry and natural resources. So it's not a lot. I do a lot of grants. I write a lot of grants. I'm addicted. Yes, we do. So we have a tree sale every spring with our Arbor Day event. Yes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, we help promote the Arbor Day event. Eleanor usually has the table there representing
Yep.
the district as well.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Rules. Definitely see a value like. Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really super great. But we also know that, you have to do a better job of protecting what resources that are out there that are sort of not affected. Spots or areas where people are not sort of watching. To see.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we're doing things different.
Totally get that.
We'd be with you.
Yes.
So I guess along that thing, when you said half an acre for a development.
Oh, so this is half an acre for like residential. So
Residential.
yep. So this is like, yeah. So lot size, like if you own a half acre or more, then you fall under our tree protection, like no matter what. But if you're under that, I guess you get a pass. But
So it would apply to somebody that's actually doing development, somebody that.
yeah, there's still like ordinances in place that like if they that if they're doing like any sort of building or whatever past like a certain degree, like they have to get like permitting and go through like that process and get like a land alterations permit from us anyway, and that might like trigger some tree protection. But we also have like a lot of conservation easements. Like almost every property, if they have like a lot of trees on their property, probably has a conservation easement on their property too, regardless of lot size. And then that also triggers our, actually they're not allowed to move any vegetation, period. Like not even buckthorn without my permission.
HOAs are going to fall. I think they're probably going to be.
Yep. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
I would think they're more like that conservation easement.
Yep. And that was like, yeah, so it doesn't matter if like the HOA's like parcel is only like half an acre, they still fall under our tree protection ordinance. And they also have to follow the landscape plan that we have on file. So if they cut any tree down, they have to still follow our tree replacement policy ordinance. So if they like, for example, like ash trees are still like we require replacement. So when I go through and like mark ash trees on their property, they're required to replace them 1-to-1. But yeah.
Any more questions for Karli? No, it doesn't look
Thank
like.
you very much, Karli.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Liz.